good to whoops. It's good to see everyone this morning. No, still doing a little bit of visiting, which is fine. We will be getting started on class here in just a minute. Yeah, I think whoops. My own. Yeah, there we go. As has already been mentioned, of course, Les is out today. He called me last night about 6:30, and I knew as soon as he called, I knew that he was not going to be here today. He did not sound up to speed, so to speak. So I knew he would not be here. I feel really bad for him because he and June are supposed to be going on vacation starting tomorrow. And so if he doesn't recover from the illness, before too long, June may kill him anyway. Since they're supposed to be going on vacation, I think they were supposed to be going up to see the grandkids up in Ohio. But Les, if you're watching, we hope you feel better soon, and wish you the very best, in recovering as quickly as possible. Am I echoing really bad, or is that just me? I'm hearing that. No, okay, good. All right. One of the times that we had, and matter of fact, Dr. Cloud and I were talking a few minutes ago. He had a situation that come up one time where he had to preach on about 5 minutes' notice. And I said, well, I got a similar situation when I was a missionary in Scotland. We had a guest speaker lined up to come and speak on a particular Sunday, and the service got started, and he still hasn't arrived, and service continues, he hasn't arrived. It's time for the sermon, and he hasn't arrived. And so I said, well, I guess I'm up. And so got up to speak that day. I know I spoke on Hebrews 11. I have no idea what exactly I said about Hebrews 11, but I know I spoke on that for a period of time. And I guess it went reasonably well, because one of the folks after the service said, well, it sure was a good idea. It was good fortune that you had a lesson with you. And I was like, well, I appreciate you saying that. I said, but I had no lesson with me. I said it was very much off the cuff, but I also felt like, well, Hebrews 11 the Bible is so full of so many messages, but Hebrews 11 is one that I felt like was one that I could go through and share some things that would be meaningful, even though there wasn't a whole lot of preparation involved. So we'll move on with where we are today. As you know, Les and I, Les prepares the vast majority of the slides, but he will send it to me, and then I'll send some things back to him, and he'll add those in. And a lot of times he kind of hands things off to me to talk about, and then he'll focus on some things that he specifically was working on. And so there was a couple of those things that as I was looking through the slides last night, I was like, I need to do a little bit more research on that to see if I can, kind of fill in the gaps a little bit, just so we don't have a slide show up and not really have anything, to go with it. But we're really getting into the aspect of the flood and of what that entailed, what was going on, and just kind of the things leading up to it, and then the actual flood itself taking place. So man's rebellion sends creation back into chaos and disorder, sin increasing exponentially. Things are just getting worse and worse. In some ways, I think We probably relate to that today from the aspect that it seems within society, in our culture, throughout the world, it seems like there are things that are getting worse and worse. And circumstances coming into play. Things that, things that used to be good are now being considered evil, and things that were evil are now being considered good. It's just almost like a 180 has taken place in so many aspects of things. And God was seeing that in the world that He had created. A world that He had created with love, with care, with compassion, and yet He's seeing that world, for the vast majority of it, just turning away from Him and turning to things that were increasingly evil and sinful. That's what was going on. That's what He was seeing. And so in Genesis 6:5, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. That's a testimony in and of itself. Just constantly, people throughout the world were just of that mindset, of just wanting to do things themselves, wanting to do whatever they wanted to do. No concern for others, only thought about themselves, and the things they kept doing were becoming more and more evil. As we go through this, we do see, as Les mentioned last week, I think even, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. We get this glimmer of hope. In spite of all that was going on, there was one man. There was Noah. He found favor in the eyes of the Lord. That's, again, a tremendous thing to be described as. That's something that I think probably each of us as Christians, we desire, that we find favor in the eyes of the Lord. We recognize that we're not always going to get things right. We recognize that we do still get challenged by temptation, and sometimes we sin. But if we can find favor in the eyes of the Lord, because God can see that we're striving to follow Him, that He is the one that we put our focus on, then we also can find favor in His eyes. So this is the account of Noah and his family.
Can we back up?
Whoop.
Sorry.
Yep.
Because I've always wrestled with that one verse.
See if I can back up.
Well,
Yep,
there
go.
it is right there.
Yeah.
Righteous. Go ahead to that
Go to the next one. Okay.
verse. Righteous man in God's eye, that he accredited him as righteous.
Mm-hmm.
He might as well have been as corrupt as the others. It's a question.
Okay. So I'm not quite following.
The world was full of evil on every thought.
Okay.
Was Noah not also in that?
No, I think he stands apart from that. The world is evil, but in God's eyes, Noah is, he's trying.
Chosen vessel.
He is, but
I don't want to belabor the point, but
Mhm.
it's just, I don't want to give too much credit to Noah either.
well, I mean, I think if Noah was here, I think Noah would say the same thing. He's not going to take credit, but he was. I think Scripture also makes it clear. He was trying. He was striving to follow God. Again, he wasn't perfect. He had issues, like we all did, or like we all do. Not all did, all do. But
Okay, there it is. Never mind.
okay.
He walked faithfully with God.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
The problem is the word righteous and blameless. The word righteous means he was in right standing with God. And the word
Okay.
He didn't mean he didn't have any faults, but he was right there at the top.
Okay. So Dr. Cloud was saying that blameless means someone full of integrity. Again, didn't mean he didn't have faults, but that what his desire was to follow God. That's what he was trying to do, and so that's something we should all strive to do, each day. We hopefully we have and build on the integrity that we each have, and that people can describe us as, a man or a woman of integrity, and someone that people can have confidence in, and knowing that basically what they see is what they're getting. That we're being, what we're projecting is who we actually are. And he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And then it starts to go into an account of Shem's family line 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old. So Noah was 502 when Shem was born. Dr. Cloud, I forgot to check on this. Since Shem is listed first, would he be considered the firstborn of Noah?
He is by many scholars because of the way because he's listed first.
Okay.
There's also to be taken he was the most important, or the emphasis was on the line that's going to lead to Abraham.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, as Dr. Cloud was saying, Shem's line leads eventually to Abraham, and so it's one of the reasons why he's got some emphasis here. Whether that means he was the oldest or not, we don't know for sure, but the importance of the fact that through his line you get to Abraham, and then beyond that is one of the reasons why he's focused on here. But it says Noah 502 years old when Shem was born. Again, the ages. I can't really wrap my head around the ages that people live to, or the fact that they had children at so far along in their lives. It's just extraordinary. Their lives their lives were not eternal, obviously, but they were on this earth for at times hundreds of years. We are obviously very much more limited than that, but 502 years old when Shem was born. So the earth was corrupt in God's sight. It was full of violence. And God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. Again, just kind of restating what was said early in one of the earlier verses. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence. Because of them, I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So it's interesting here that God revealed, he reveals his plan to Noah. He tells him what's going to happen, what's going to take place. God does that, from time to time. In Genesis 18, this was one that Les had mentioned, this has to deal with Sodom and Gomorrah. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Verse 17. And in verse 20, then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, their sin is so grievous, I will go down, see if what they've done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. Of course, this is the situation where Abraham basically, for lack of a better term, bargains with God. Says, hey, well, what if there's 50 righteous souls? Or what if there's 45? Or what if there's 40? Or 30, 20? Finally gets down to 10. If there's 10 righteous souls, will you relent from destroying the cities? And God said he would. Sadly, he couldn't find 10 righteous people. But he informs Abram what he's going to do, just as he informed Noah what he was going to do. Here's what's going to happen. And so he said, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. And in the King James Version, make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. So some translations put in cypress, some of the older translations put in gopher. So what is gopher wood? So this is some things that I had sent to Les, just some research that I had done, just kind of see where some various scholars come down on this. Well, first of all, the first one I didn't put up there, what is gopher wood? As sometimes has been said, as a little bit of humor, well, God told Noah, go for wood. Go get some wood. Just go for it. But in Genesis 6:14, this is, as far as I'm aware, it's the only place in Scripture that the word gopher is used. And there's not a great consensus on what gopher wood actually is or was. Perhaps if gopher wood existed, perhaps it didn't exist, after the flood. Some scholars consider gopher wood as cypress wood because it's extremely durable, something that would have been essential for the ark. Considering the size of the ark and the volume of it, it would definitely need to be something that was very durable. Gopher wood has also been tied to cedar, pine, fir, acacia, boxwood, just to name a few. And it's certainly, as I said, it's certainly possible that gopher wood simply doesn't exist anymore following the flood. Maybe it just didn't exist. Some scholars suggested that gopher may refer to a laminating process to improve the stability of the wood due to the extreme size and weight of the ark. And some scholars have put forth the view that a scribe simply misspelled the word, and that the word instead should be kopher rather than gopher, that the words are very similar. The word kopher in Hebrew has several meanings. One of those meanings is covering or pitch. Again, I'm just saying if this was correct, then the passage would read something like this: make yourself an ark of pitched wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. Okay, so those are various options that various scholars have put forward. This next one is the most important one, though. Ask Dr. Cloud. So, do you have an opinion on this?
The first thing to keep in mind is it's a Hebrew word, whether it's meant to be spelled with a G or a K, and that's a transliteration. Of course, unfortunately, it matches our word gopher, which is an animal.
Right.
It's, number one, needs to be seen that, but all the options are up there. You've got all the options. Some of the ancient translations, like the Septuagint or the Vulgate, did something totally different. They made certain shapes of wood, and then you mentioned also it could be it could be something to do shape to glue them together in a certain way, but we do not know the best. There's really no best guess. All of those are guesses in the ballpark. They're in the ballpark. It's really all they are.
Okay.
We don't need to know.
Right. Yeah, we don't need to know. Again, it's one of those questions that sometimes people get caught up on and spend a huge amount of time on, but not something that's overly relevant at this time.
In the day, it was God's design.
Right, yeah, it's God's design. And basically, Dr. Cloud, for those of you who may not be able to hear what he said, he basically said, pick one and go with it. Or that we really don't, basically we don't know which one of these is accurate.
The ancient translator didn't know. They tried all kind of guesses.
Mhm.
The ancient Greek, the Latin translation, they just had to make a guess.
Okay, so he was saying that the ancient translators in Greek, Latin, they basically were guessing like we are, as far as what is the actual correct way of looking at that, or what would be the right way. So it could be any of these. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It's not what was important. What's important is the fact that God has a plan and a purpose for saving Noah and his family, and for saving the animals in the ark. He had a purpose, and as we'll see here in a minute, Noah's response to that. He says, this is how you should make it. The ark to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark. Make lower, middle, and upper decks. I guess if you've been on a cruise ship or seen pictures of cruise ships, obviously you know that these ships have various decks. And so the ark had decks, at least these 3 decks that Noah built. Here's a rendition. I don't know for sure. That may be the one that's in Kentucky. I'm not 100% sure. The one that if you how many people have been up to the one? Is that what it doesn't look like that one? Okay. I know there's other ones that have been built to try to reflect the size of it. It's amazing, you look at that and you see, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but you can see some people who are just standing there, and it sort of gives you an idea of the magnitude of the ark itself, the size that it was. And also think about how they built that thing, in that day and age, and with tools that obviously would be, primitive from, as what we would think of, and yet they were able to build this ark and build it properly to where it would survive the flood that was coming. He says, Genesis 6:17, God says, I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on the earth will perish. And then the ancient world had several flood stories similar to the Bible's. And one of these, and this is one that Les had pulled up, was called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, I did a little bit of research on it to try to get an idea of what was going on in this particular event that is described. The Epic of Gilgamesh, these are just some notes that I've made. It was, let me see if I can find, part of the table that it was written on goes back to about 2000 BC. The final description of the flood event in this epic I believe, and Dr. Cloud, correct me if I'm wrong, dates to about 680, 700 BC. Okay. And so in this epic, I'm going to give you some comparisons, some things that are similar, some things that are different as regards to what the flood is that's described here and the flood account that we have in Genesis. First of all, there were two people, obviously. In Genesis, God is speaking to Noah. In the epic that in which this description takes place, it's that there are many gods. Okay, it wasn't monotheistic; it was polytheistic. And the person that was being spoken to was, I'm really going to struggle with this pronunciation, but Utnapishtim. I don't know if it's Utnapishtim. Babylonian name. I'll go with that instead of trying to pronounce it again. So that's a Babylonian name. That is who the gods were speaking to in regards to, again, the person who was going to build the ark. So that's in the epic, and of course Noah is in the one in Genesis. In this particular account, the individual is warned in a dream. Okay, he's warned in a dream about what he needed to do. Obviously, in Genesis' account, God is speaking to Noah directly. You know, he's having a conversation with Noah, so he's speaking to him directly. The floodwaters, as we know in Genesis, you know, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The description in the Epic of Gilgamesh is it rained for 6 days and 7 nights. Obviously, a much shorter period of time that's listed. It still amazes me. If you just say the flood, people know what you're talking about as far as Nashville's concerned. You know, back in 2010, and the amount of rain that fell in such a short period of time. I don't recall exactly the length of period of time it was. I want to say it was maybe 2 to 3 days of rain that we had, very heavy rain that we had in the greater Nashville area in 2010, I think it was. I still recall watching on TV, watching the flooding that was taking place, particularly areas that, you know, I grew up in Antioch, and I was watching houses and these and trailers and tractor trailers just floating down the interstate, or you know, they've been picked up and taken off, and that's over a period of only a couple of days of rain, 2, maybe 3 days of heavy rain. 40 days and 40 nights of heavy, constant rain. So again, the length of time in the Epic of Gilgamesh is much shorter than what's given in the account in Genesis. When they started looking for, trying to see if there was going to be some land, you know, when there was land, dry land that was going to appear again, both Noah and the Babylonian character, they both released birds, you know, to see if they can find somewhere to land, or bring back, you know, a twig or something, just to show that the waters were starting to recede. In Genesis, the ark rested on Mount Ararat. In this account, the ark rest on, is it Nisr, Mount Nisr? Is that the correct pronunciation? Those two mountains are approximately 300 miles apart. Both arks, they had a door, they had a window. The ark was rectangular, pretty much in shape, whereas the ark in this account was more like a square in shape. So those were some of the similarities and some of the differences, that we see in the accounts. There are those, obviously, there are liberal scholars who want to say that Noah, or that the writer of Genesis, they borrowed from this account. There's no evidence to suggest that I've been able to find. There's no evidence to suggest that was the case. In one of the things that the people did keep very well, the Jewish people, the oral traditions and keeping it, retelling the stories so that they remained constant and alive to the people. And then eventually, of course, it's written in the book of Genesis. Dr. Cloud, do you have anything you can think of to add to this?
Yeah, I think one really important thing about the differences is in some of the flood stories that were actually conservative. The reason that God destroyed the earth was because the people were so noisy that gods couldn't sleep. In the Bible, it was destroyed because of sin.
Okay.
That's the most important difference of all.
Okay. So what Dr. Cloud said was that in the various accounts, because this isn't the only one, other accounts of flooding, of the great floods, that in these other accounts, the gods destroyed the world because the people were too noisy. They were too loud. Whereas, obviously, in the Genesis account, it's because the people were just so evil and were becoming so evil. So that is one of the major important points, one of the major differences. Again, it kind of reminds us, or at least it reminds me of, for lack of a better term, the superficiality of polytheism, of these gods. How fickle they were presented. And if you're ever interested in Greek, Roman mythology, or others, I mean, you do some reading and some studying, and you can see, the gods in those accounts are no better than the people, and yet so different with Genesis or with the Bible, where God is, He is the creator. He is the one who's in control. He is the one who's in charge. He loves His people. He loves His creation. And I can only imagine how, I know He was angry, but how sad He would have been to have to take the steps that He did in regards to destroying the world, through the flood and the circumstances that came about. So, if you want to do some homework, look up some stuff on the Epic of Gilgamesh or some of the other flood stories, and again, compare and contrast what it is between this and Genesis. There are some very important differences that stand out in regards to that. God goes on talking with Noah, "I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you." So 8 people coming into the ark. I think one of the other things with the Epic of Gilgamesh is it was Babylonian character. his wife, some other relatives, but also some friends as well. So it was a little bit more expanded than what we see here, obviously with the account in Genesis. He says, you're to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. Again, I try to put myself in Noah's position, and God's telling me this, and I don't know, I'm kind of thinking, what exactly were we doing here again? We're having all these animals are going to come and be on the ark, and how are they all going to get along? What's going to happen? Well, God takes care of those things, and again, Noah puts his confidence in God. He says, you are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for the animals. And this verse just stands out to me. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. He followed God's rules. He followed God's law. He followed his commands. What to do, how to build the ark. What's it supposed to look like? How many stories is it supposed to have? What's the size that it's supposed to be? You bring all these animals in. This is what's going to take place. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Again, a great testimony to him. And hopefully, in our own lives, as we reflect on our lives, we are striving to do everything that God commands of us as well. So again, an incredible compliment to Noah, to his faithfulness, and to his trust, his tremendous trust in God. So, this was a question, again, some questions that come to my mind. These aren't important questions. These aren't necessarily questions we're going to have answers to, but it's things that come to my mind. What was going through the minds of his relatives and neighbors, while this ark is being built? Just kind of stop and think. As everybody, the people around him, and they're watching this huge boat being built. What is going through everybody else's mind out there? I'm sure some of them thought Noah was just crazy as a loon. What is he doing? I'm sure, I have no doubt he faced ridicule, for what was going on. But what were they thinking? Then what are they thinking when the animals begin arriving, to enter the ark? Again, what were the people thinking? And then tragically, what were they thinking when the rains actually came? And they realized they should have been paying attention to Noah. Should have been listening to Noah. And instead, they were lost. But how oftentimes do people today, they reject God. They ignore him. They ignore his commands. They ignore his teachings. And if people continue to ignore the teachings and commandments of God, they're going to be just as tragic as what happened there in the flood. It said, after being made alive, he went, and this is 1 Peter 3, 19 and 20, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago. God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. People had opportunities. And yet, how often in our day and time does the message fall on deaf ears? It can be discouraging when that happens, but it should never stop us from sharing the message. It should never stop us from, as was talked about this morning, being active as disciples, recognizing that wherever we are and whoever we come in contact with is an opportunity. Not only an opportunity, but a privilege to try to tell them and share with them the message of God, the message of salvation, the message of hope. Because in our world today, there is so little hope for people because they're looking in the wrong places. They're trying to find answers in the wrong places instead of looking to God. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. Also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth." Again, the plan.
Is that clean birds, like pigeons and whatever? If he's talking about clean animals, sacrifices, or were there 7 birds of every species?
You want to...
7 pairs of every kind of clean animal. And then it goes to the birds, 7 pairs of every kind of bird. Clean birds? Like pigeons, but not 7 buzzards. Okay.
Again, when I stop and think about it, what's
I don't mean to overcomplicate.
No, you're fine. I think it may be the next slide. Let me see. Okay, well, 7 pairs of every kind of bird. Well, I'll need to get to it here in a second. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature that I have made. Noah did again. Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the floodwaters came on the earth. So I don't know if I'm reading into this something that's not there. Is it a case where, and maybe it's just not something we know, it's not that important, but were the animals just coming? In other words, was Noah having to go out to get the animals, or were they just coming to the ark? In other words, God had caused them just to come to the ark. Is that what was likely going on, or?
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's pretty clear that Noah was in an impossible task. God directed him. And there's several things to keep in mind. One is people think about the animal being grown. God could have sent very young animals, and that would take up less space, less food. And also, the big debate about whether or not it was a worldwide flood as we think of it, or was it the Hebrew word would also mean a large territory. If you're trying to destroy mankind, why do you need to put water the whole earth? You see, you need to destroy mankind. Therefore, you would have to be limited also with the kind of animals you have to have. If that makes any sense at all. It doesn't make
Because it's geographic.
the word all, as I said in class one time, doesn't mean all every time. It means sometimes the majority of people, or it means their earth was the ancient Near East.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind, their land. And so we put that in our own language.
Right. We have to try to put ourselves back to where they were.
The basic thing for us to know is that whatever it was, God handled it and God made it reasonable for Noah's situation. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. It really comes down to, as you say, it comes down to our confidence in God. You know, that He took care of Noah and the people. And again, as Dr. Cloud was saying there, he's saying, you know, the word all doesn't always mean all every time, if I heard you correctly on that. And was it, you know, the world, the known world where the people lived at that time was a small, comparatively speaking, a small area of the world. So, you know, was it destroying that area? Was it destroying the whole world? You know, we don't really know for sure, but what we do know is that God, again, His providence took care of those who were righteous and who were trying to follow Him.
God's trying to is destroying their world, and no matter what you have, it has to be several hundred miles.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that with a lot of points, but the point is that we don't know all the details, but we do know that God did it, and like that, the size of the animal, we don't know the ages, but it make a lot more sense for the two elephants to be two small elephants, young elephants rather than two massive.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. One of the things that's mentioned here is the fact that sometimes when and a lot of times you see the depictions in pictures of the animals coming in the ark. They're all grown. You know, they're all adult. You know, going on the ark, and that's not necessarily the case. They could easily have been, you know, and would have made more sense to be small, you know, very young animals that would have not taken up nearly as much space, you know, in the ark. I know our time is finishing up here. I think we're almost to the end here on our slide presentation. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. There actually are a few more slides, but we're going to finish there because I don't want to rush through those. Some of those were some that less specifically, you know, was put in there, and I think there may be some things that he would want to share, hopefully next week. But again, thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for your attention. We'll have a prayer and then we'll be dismissed. God, we do thank you so much for this day, and we thank you for your blessings. We thank you so much for your word that we continue to learn from. We continue to be amazed by your providence, by your hand in so many things, by the things that you directed. We're thankful for those people of faith such as Noah, who was found righteous in your eyes. We thank you for his example and the example of so many others. Help us to continue to learn from them and to have our faith become stronger through them. We ask you to be with us as we prepare to leave from here today. Take us to our various destinations safely. Help us to touch the lives of those around us, whether they are family members or friends or people we haven't even met before. But as we come in contact with them, help us to do what we can to allow them to see that you are living in us. We pray you'll be with Les. I pray for his recovery as quickly as possible. Just continue to be a blessing to him, and be with all those who may be struggling in different ways right now. Some that we may not know, but we all have those that on our hearts and minds who are struggling and dealing with challenges.